Hey guys, so today we're going to start writing proofs. So today is the introduction to proof writing. So we're just going to start with the algebraic proofs. So remember your test is the day before fall break, and fall break starts on the 14th. So today we'll begin algebraic proofs. So first of all of these properties you have to know. You're just going to have to memorize them, learn them, but I bet the majority of them you already know. Like, for example, the addition property. Well, if I had an equation that said x minus 3 equals 9, what would you do to solve that? Well, you would add 3 to both sides of the equation. That is the addition property. Just like the subtraction property, if I had x plus 3 equals 9, I would subtract 3 on both sides. So addition property and subtraction property, it's just the operation that you're doing to both sides of the equation. Multiplication and division property, same idea. If I had x over 2 equals 10, what would I do to solve that? Well, I would multiply both sides by 2. So that would be multiplication property. Well, if I had 2x equals 10, what would I do to solve that? Well, I would divide both sides by 2. X equals 5. So that would be the division property. So like I said, most of these you already know. The ones you probably don't know would be reflexive, symmetric, and transitive property. So you will have to memorize those. So reflexive property shows an example of A equals A. Basically, it's just something that equals itself. You'll see that a lot more when we're starting to prove triangles are congruent later. So reflexive property, I think reflection in the mirror. If you're looking in the mirror, you're seeing your identical self. So that's reflexive property. Symmetric property is kind of like the converse that we learned. If A equals B, then B equals A. So it's kind of like the flip. That's symmetric property. You just got to memorize it. Transitive property is kind of like the law of syllogism that we did. That's the one where we take out what's repeated. So if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. So I would take out the B's, take out what's repeated, and then just say A equals C. We also have substitution property. That's just when you substitute something in for something else. And then the distributive property, which hopefully you remember the distributive property. If I were to distribute 4 and then parentheses x plus 2, I would do 4 times x and 4 times 2. So that's the distributive property. Substitution property would be like if I know that x equals 2, I would take 2 and plug it in for x. So I'm substituting 2 in for x. So those are properties you're just going to have to know. You're going to have to memorize. You're going to have to learn. So just a quick reminder again, reflexive property, something equals itself, the exact same thing. AB would equal AB, or angle A would equal angle A. Symmetric property is like the converse. If AB equals CD, then CD equals AB. And transitive property is like the law of syllogism, where you take out what's repeated. If AB equals CD and CD equals EF, I can take out the CDs and say that AB equals EF. So look at your assignment. You're going to determine what property justifies each statement. So the first one says if RS equals TU and TU equals YP, then RS equals YP. What was that property called? What was the one where you take out what's repeated? That would be transitive property. What about this next one? If 7x equals 28, then x equals 4. So you always have to ask yourself, how did I get from the if to the then? What did I do to both sides? Well, I divided by 7. So 7 goes into 28 4 times. So that would be division property because I'm dividing both sides. Okay, this one says if angle 1 equals 30 and angle 1 equals angle 2, then angle 2 equals 30. So there's actually 2 things this could be. This could be substitution property or transitive property. Okay, so I have it as substitution property because if I know 1 equals 30 and 1 equals 2, I could substitute the 30 in for angle 1 and say 2 equals 30. So on this one, put substitution property. It would also be okay to say transitive property, but that's what on this assignment it's going to count it wrong just because it only allows me to put one answer. But you could think about taking out what's repeated. I could take out the angle 1s and be left with 2 equals 30. So really both answers are correct, but put substitution property. This next one, same thing. If angle G equals 35 and 35 equals angle S, then angle G equals angle S. Well, again, I could substitute angle G in for 35, or I could take out what's repeated, take out the 35s. So on this one, put transitive property. Transitive property. Okay, look at the next one. If 10x plus 6y equals 14 and x equals 2y, then 10 times 2y plus 6y equals 14. So do you notice if x equals 2y, I just took the 2y and plugged it in for x. So I substituted the 2y in for x. So put substitution property on that. And then this one, if fn equals ma and ma equals th, then fn equals th. So that's the one where we take out what's repeated. So put transitive property on that one. This one says if jk equals lm and lm equals jk, do you remember the one that's just the flip? That one's called the symmetric property. So symmetric, if ab equals ab, something that equals itself, do you remember what that one's called? So remember, I think reflection in the mirror, the exact same. It's called the reflexive property. This one says if x divided by 2 equals 10, then x equals 20. What did we do to both sides of the equation? Well, you multiplied both sides by 2, so that's multiplication property. And then finally, if x minus 2 equals 3, then x equals 5. So what did we do to both sides of the equation to get x equal to 5? Well, we added 2, so that would be addition property. Okay. So you'll have to do the same thing for number 2. You're going to have to figure out the properties. For question 3, you're going to do the property that it tells you to do. So like the first one says, I'm going to use the symmetric property. So it says if mn equals ut, then ut would equal mn. Make sure you use capitals. You have to use the division property on the next one. If 4 times angle QRT equals 120, then the measure of angle QRT would equal, and I've got to use the division property, so I would be dividing both sides by 4. So do 120 divided by 4. Transitive property is the one that you take out what's repeated. Addition property, make sure you add something to both sides. And then reflexive property equals itself. So you have to do that on those. All right. Okay, just some more of the same thing. Name the property again, so you're going to get lots of practice with that. Okay, let's move on. Let's start talking about proofs. So we're going to start just by doing algebraic proofs, which that just means we're justifying each step. So when we start with a proof, we always start with something called the given. So 99% of the time, the first statement is going to be given. You are given this equation. So I'm given that 6 plus 2 times x minus 1 equals 30. That's where I'm given, that's what I'm given, that's what I'm starting with. So then you always ask yourself, how do I go from this step to this step? What changed from here to here? Well, what changed was I multiplied the 2 times the x and the negative 1. Do you remember which property that is? That is called distributive property. Then what happened from this step to this step? Well, do you see that I just combined my 6x and 2x? When you are just combining like terms, that is not addition property because we're not adding to both sides of the equal. When you're just combining like terms, it's either combine like terms, you could say that, or simplify. So in geometry, we oftentimes just say simplify because we're just simplifying it. Then what did I do to get from this step to this step? Well, I added 2 to both sides of the equation, so that would be addition property. And then what did I do to get from here to here? Well, I divided both sides by 8. So 8 goes into 32 4 times, so that's division property. So you're just going to be justifying each step. So on the assignment, look at number 6. So I start with 7x minus 4 equals 10. So what was it called when they just give me an equation? That is called given. Never prove, never pick prove. So then what happened from here to here? What changed? What did I do to both sides of the equation? Well, the 10 turned into a 14. How did that happen? Well, I added 4 to both sides. And then what happened from the second step to the third step? How did the 14 change to a 2? What did we do? Well, we divided both sides by 7, so that would be division property. So you'll do the same thing for number 7. Number 7 is kind of tricky. Let's go ahead and do this one. So what do we always start with? What's that first reason? We start with the given. Then what happens from this step to this step? Notice the 0.25x and the 2x got combined together. Do you remember what that's called? We just call it simplify in geometry. Simplify. Then what happened from this step to this step? Well, the 39 changed to a 27, and the 12 went away. What did we do? Well, we subtracted 12 on both sides. So subtraction property. Now this is the tricky one. Everybody's like, what in the world did they do? So the 2.25 changed to 225, and the 27 changed to 2700. What would we have had to do to both sides of the equation? Well, we multiplied both sides by 100 to get rid of that decimal. And I don't know why they did it that way, but we'll go with it. Then how did I get from that step to the last step? I would be dividing by 225. That gives me the 12, so that's division property. So hopefully that helps with those. Okay, so back to this. All right, this leads to proof writing. So on the majority of proofs, you're going to have something you're given and something you have to prove. And a lot of times there's going to be a diagram. So these are called two-column proofs. So you've got the statements on one side and then the reasons on the other side. So that's what a general proof looks like. So let's do one. Let's look at number 12. So number 12, I am given. So notice this isn't an if-then statement, but the if part is what you're given, and the then part is what you're trying to prove. So this is my given, and this is what I'm trying to prove. So I'm giving that segment AB is congruent to segment AC, and then I want to prove ultimately that x equals 4. So AB equals AC, that's my given, so that's where I start, given. But then notice that AB got replaced with 3x plus 15, and the AC got replaced with 5x plus 7. What's it called when you replace something with something else? That is called substitution property. So we substituted something in for something else. Now go to the next line. I'm left with 8 equals 2x. How did that happen? Well, I minused 3x on both sides. That's where the 2x came from. And I minus 7 on both sides. 15 minus 7 is 8. So I'm subtracting on both sides. That would be subtraction property. And then finally, what happens on the last step? 8 equals 2x turns into 4 equals x. Well, we divided both sides by 2. So that is division property. So it's the same thing with 13, and then you just have more filling in reasons for the proofs. Let's look at number 16. Let's do 16 together because there's that word bisector in there. So I'm given that AB is the bisector of angle CAD. AB is the bisector of CAD. See how that matches the given? So our first reason is going to be given. Anytime there's a word in a proof, the next line is always going to be definition of that word. Because of the word bisect, I can now say that angles CAB and BAD would equal each other because I know that AB bisects that whole angle. So the next one's going to be definition of bisector. Now, angle CAB got replaced with 7x plus 2. And angle BAD got replaced with 5 times x plus 4. So what happens, what's it called when you replace something with something else? That is called substitution property. And then what happened from step 3 to step 4? Well, notice the 7x plus 2 stayed the same, but this 5 got distributed. So that's called the distributive property. Then what happens from step 4 to step 5? Well, notice we subtracted the 5x on both sides to get the 2x, and I subtracted the 2 on both sides to get the 18. So that would be subtraction property. And then finally, what happens from step 5 to step 6? Well, we divided both sides by 2, so division property. Okay, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.